Okay, good afternoon. It is October 22nd, 4:03, a few minutes late because the camera wasn't quite working. This time of year, I do a bunch of interviews on other podcasts. So I just finished one earlier on the presidential election, and we'll talk a little bit more about the presidential election as people log in, but also on what's happening at Brantford High School and the incident yesterday that the whole town is pretty much talking about, the police department is talking about, and we will try to find a way to figure that out. I'm making sure the camera works. If you're listening, am I on? All right, I think so. So there's just so many comments coming in and questions and what happened yesterday in Brantford. Before we get too far into that, our election numbers, like we look at every day. Momentum still seems to be on the Trump side. The overall Harris is 0.9. Now, a Morning Consult, which is a left-leaning poll, but a huge voter, 8,500 people polled, which ended on the 20th, has Harris up nationally by 4. So that's a good sign for Harris. It puts her up in the aggregate 0.9 overall. Again, based on what happened in the last 4 years or the last 2 presidential election cycles, where Democrats were pretty much overvalued by about 3.5 to 4 points, that's still a bad number. And Real Clear also has Trump gaining in pretty much every swing state. The only swing state that really matters much to me, quite frankly, is Pennsylvania. And because once that is called on election night or election week or whenever, Trump in the aggregate is up 0.8. There were 3 of the last 7 polls taken. Trump has led 6 of them. And in at least 2 of them hits the very important 50-point threshold. So Pennsylvania is going to be everything. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Okay, so most important and what everybody wants to talk about today is what happened at Brantford High School. I think, I could be wrong, but I may be able to play. Maybe not. What happened? And we all saw the videos. You can go on my Facebook page. You can go on Brantford 7. You can go on any of these sites and see the videos that happened. But clearly a fight between 2 girls at the high school. It's unlike, basically just knowing how school, this is the we'll meet you after school. They did it off of school grounds, which is probably smart. But it became a shit show. And what's most fascinating about this is, a police officer gets there, arrests one of the girls. The other girl and other people suddenly run to another area. A big fight, brawl starts out there. Somehow more cops are called. It ends up inside Dunkin' Donuts. One of the students pushes a police officer into a glass window, breaks that glass window. If you're reading the police report, it was bad. It was just a free-for-all with kids. And there's a few things that jump out at you just that are surreal about society kind of thing. One is just how many people just took their phones out and recorded. Like there was no genuine concern for another human being. They're fighting on asphalt, throwing each other to the ground. The odds of somebody getting seriously damaged are actually pretty high in that circumstance. And we have 15, 16, 17-year-old kids around them, cheering them on and recording. Because that seems to be the only thing that actually matters now, is getting it recorded and put it on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever social media program and they want to put this on. So very quickly, once this fight happens, I have text messages like crazy. Here's video of every possible angle, every possible thing. So the first video that went up was inside of Dunkin' Donuts, and it was one person getting tased and then taking another student to the ground by multiple police officers. So at a first glance, you could look at this and say, what the hell? And we have some comments that were like, what are these cops doing? They're overusing their authority. They're overusing their power. I didn't see it that way. And when the cops came out today and in their press release said a cop was assaulted, pushed into the glass wall, the glass broke in Dunkin' Donuts. And I drove by today and it's plywooded over. at some point, I try to put myself in the position of this police officer. And the job of the police officer is to de-escalate the incident without injury to either somebody else or the person they're trying to subdue. So they have weapons of death in their possession, and they're trained not to use them. They're doing everything they can to calm the situation down. The person, these teenage boys, who, by the way, are bigger than some of the officers they're against, aren't thinking, let's do no harm. They're not thinking, let's not do danger. They're thinking, swing, fight, punch, kick, whatever they have to do to get out of it. Now, very quickly, we have a society now that plays the victim, and oh my God, the police came after me. But knowing these police officers, I find that hard to believe. And then seeing the video, how it was initially approached by multiple angles, I don't think that was the case at all. But certainly by some people, the first reaction is, oh my God, the police are, being brutal and overstepping their bounds and doing things they shouldn't be doing again. So that's the first thing that jumped out at me. The second one, obviously, was the phones. Like, what the hell? Like, whatever happened to human decency where other people are in danger and we say, let's stop this. Let's end this. If one of those kids saw two cats or two dogs fighting, they'd stop in and stop it before they stopped two classmates fighting. You're on asphalt. There's very good likelihood somebody's going to be seriously injured if the cop doesn't come and shut that down. And then you're screaming about the cops. That's absolutely absurd. So I don't think the cops did anything wrong here. I think they did what they had to do. Their job was to stop the fight. It looks like no kids were hurt in any way. I think some officers may have been. The cops did their job. So any complaint that I hear that's, the cops did too far, I just don't buy it. In this case, anyway. But it's funny, reading the comments today, I wrote something about the need for extracurricular activities. And while I've seen students in sports act poorly, it's on a far less scale than I see it otherwise. When kids have too much time on their hands, this shit happens. And when kids are in sports, a different level of accountability happens. It's almost like joining the military. You don't become a robot. What happens is you're accountable to the person next to you. It's not just obeying authority. You're accountable to your teammates. You're accountable to your people on cheerleading or on basketball or football or the people putting on a play. Theater has always jumped out at me as a very interesting thing because you have, athletes are all athletes. They're on the same team. Theater, you have every different ability. You have actors, you have singers, you have stagehands, all coming together to make it happen. But your accountability is to each other. It's not just listen to authority. And that's what makes it so successful. And so I make the argument that extracurricular activities, sports, theater, whatever it is, should be mandatory. Now, maybe school starts a little bit later, starts at 8:30 or 9 o'clock instead, and it goes to 5:30 with part of these extracurriculars to keep these kids busy. We can't be having these things happening. And so the first comment from a lot of people is, well, the parents have to be better. Okay. There's a lot of things we want in a utopia. It's very easy to say it's the parents' fault. They're not doing the job. We need them to get better. And we can say that until we're blue in the face. It's not going to happen. And for a lot of reasons. They could just be lazy parents. They could just be bad parents. They could also be two parents that are working their ass off to pay the bills. It could be a single parent who's desperately trying to pay the bills and can't be there for their kids on a regular basis. It's usually the parents who have, two adults in a nuclear family happening, or I don't mean nuclear as in straight, but just two parents involved, have some funds coming in, have, money coming in, they're well financed, that say, oh, it's the parenting. But those parents have things on their plate too. And if you're a teacher or you're a superintendent or you're an administrator, you have to say to yourself, great, I'd love for all the parents to be wonderful. I'd love for all the parents to do exactly what they're supposed to do. I'd love for all those parents to get those kids home, their homework done every night, all their chores done, they're up on time, they're never tardy, they're in school every day, they're responsible kids. I would love for that to happen. But it's not realistic. It's nonsense. It's just like I'd love to have no cancer, but it's never going to happen. So the school has to come up with ways that we counteract what's happening in society. And we can yell about society all we want. I made the argument years ago. I wrote it on an article on social media. And when we talk about the fall of the American empire, we are going to start with Mark Zuckerberg. We're going to start with what social media has done to people, the way we interact, the way we attack others, our political world, and kids. And maybe there should be an age limit for social media. I have no idea, but society is not changing tomorrow. There's no rule we can pass in Brantford or Guilford or along the shoreline or in the state that's going to drastically change the way kids use social media, the way kids push taking video of fights and putting it online. All of this bullying, all the arguments, all the stuff we're seeing usually starts online. It usually starts on a Snapchat thing, or starts on, we saw it in Madison with naked pictures being sent around. Apparently this fight was two girls over some boy. This nonsense that happens isn't going away. Social media isn't going away. So we can sit there all we want and talk about parents being more effective, but we need to come up with actual policies that find a way to counteract what's happening in society. And this fight is a very good example of what happens when things start small, fester, fester, fester. They become huge, brutal fights. They involve the cops, and suddenly we're claiming the cops are being too over the top or brutal in stopping this. No, the cops very likely saved somebody's life. It's very likely that if you had two girls and then 10 kids, and then you had boys going at each other, enough punches are thrown, enough items are thrown that somebody could have died easily. So to turn around and say the cops are being too much is a ridiculous initial reaction. And I happen to know most of these cops. Most are pretty even keeled. They have a job to do, and that is to keep the person safe and anybody they can hurt safe. If no cops showed up to that, we're not talking about, wow, that was a bad fight today. We're talking about how many got injured or if someone got killed. Because kids had no control whatsoever of what they were doing at that moment. Just read some of these comments. Premeditated fight. I think, listen, we all had premeditated fights. When we were in school, it was always like meet in the schoolyard and that kind of thing. In this case, they made a point to meet outside of school property. So, certainly no question they're premeditated. Michelle, most of the children involved are guests. They are not town children. They are not embracing the program of why they're in our district. They don't respect our community or authority. The school needs to recognize suspending is not the answer. They need to be expelled. We're taking the situation much too lightly. Last week was in the cafeteria, stepping on a girl's neck. 2 days later, they are assaulting law enforcement and vandalizing and stealing from local businesses. Okay. I don't buy into they're out-of-towners argument. Maybe some are. That's just the way it is. But I don't know. Are kids that are Brantford born and raised better behaved than kids that are New Haven born and raised just because of where they were born? It doesn't make much sense to me. And you had a lot of Brantford kids involved, and I know because I heard from a lot of those Brantford parents. So I'm not buying. I know people like to go into this. Well, this person's coming in from out of town. There's a program where we swap some students. And there could be all kinds of arguments on whether or not that's a valid program or not. But I don't think Brantford kids are angels. I don't think the kids in my own town are angels by any means. And I don't think there are angels in any town. Like, you'll find kids that will start stuff in every town. My common denominator is when kids are ones who don't start stuff, they're not part of that, it's because they're busy doing something else. Show me the hockey kid. Show me the kid playing basketball. Show me the kid in the annual play. Show me kid in other programs that are devoted to that are buy into those programs, that are accountable to not just their teachers and the leaders, but other students. When you're an offensive lineman in football, you're accountable to the other players on your team. When you're a soldier, you're accountable to the soldiers next to you. When you join a team, when you join a theater group, when you join a chess group and you play as a team, the mathletes, whatever the hell it is, when you have accountability to each other, life is different. These kids go to school, they go home, they start fights because they had nowhere else to be. And that's what needs to change. You're saying 5 trained officers couldn't subdue a 15-year-old boy. One, 15-year-old boy is not a small boy. Okay, these are not tiny. I'm not a small guy now. At 15, I wasn't a small guy either. So, and remember, the 5 officers are trying to do so without harming anyone. Now, I dated somebody who had a 4-year-old son, and I can tell you as a grown man who works out You have a hard time subduing a 4-year-old boy when you're trying not to. If I'm trying to hurt somebody, it's a different story. 5 officers trying to hurt somebody, yeah, that kid's down. But when you're purposely trying not to hurt them, when you're trying to just subdue them, yeah, did you see the video? They tased him. The kid pulled off the taser. So it's a different world. This is not, Mike Tyson fighting somebody. Your goal is to knock them out. The police are not trying to knock out a kid. They're trying to subdue him. They want him to calm down. So there's a lot of things you could do to end the altercation very quickly, but officers are not trying to do that. They have guns in their pocket. They could do it. 5 guys could take that guy real fast, but when they're worried about the safety of that person, no matter how angry that person is, no matter out of control that 15-year-old is, they're still trying to subdue them in a calm manner. They're trying to stop him from hurting himself or others. That's different than, hey, just take this guy down. It's not the same conversation. Michelle, exactly. My son is on the football team and is at school from 7 a.m. to 7, and he can't feel safe to walk across the street to buy a snack. Car full of kids came yesterday, not from the school parking lot. I'm not saying Brantford kids are not involved, but the ringleaders need to be held accountable. Enough is enough, as we parents need to stand up and keep our children safe. We need better for them. There needs to be police presence in that area for drop-off with numerous. Okay, yeah, I think the police did a good job. I cannot come to the conclusion. I have some emails that are the police should be held accountable and some people should be fired. And I am not seeing the same video you're seeing. I'm not seeing you can shoot an unarmed team. Nobody shot an unarmed team. So I don't know what that comment means. The cops did fine from what I can see. Now, maybe maybe a video shows up that changes that, but I have not seen that yet. Everything I've seen was the cops showed up. The first cop was as calm as could be, subdued one of the girls involved the best he could. You had a bunch of other kids running around. They started another fight. More cops get called in. The kids are going crazy, swinging, throwing, all this stuff. Ends up inside Dunkin' Donuts. A cop gets thrown into the window, which is smashed. Cops try to subdue that person. That person is not a weak person. This is not a small child. And they try to bring him down in a safe manner. And that's it. Listen, you're telling me 5 cops in 10 square feet, 3 more outside. If they wanted to take him down and did not care about his safety, they could have done so in 2 seconds. When you're trying to take someone down and subdue them, but you also care about their safety, it's a different ball game. It's not the same thing. When you have somebody who's if you've dealt with someone with severe mental illness, having a breakdown, severe anxiety breakdown, if you dealt with something having a serious panic attack, you try to calm them and subdue them, it is not an easy thing to do. If you don't mind hurting them, you can do it fairly easily. But if you don't want to hurt them, and the cops don't want to hurt these kids, when you try to de-escalate the situation, it is not an easy thing to do, especially when the kid is a strong kid. So this idea that, oh my God, it should be so easy to do. No, it shouldn't be so easy to do. And let me tell you something else. If you're a passerby and you try to step in and use force beyond what the cops were and hurt that person, you're in serious trouble. Is punching and a taser not hurting them? They did what they had to do to subdue the person without him hurting himself. Oh, by the way, and he's not hurt. He went to the hospital because he was tased. That's normal protocol, but he's okay. So they did what they were trained to do. The cops are not bodybuilders. What planet are you on? I know these cops. They're not bodybuilders. So this idea is just crazy. I don't know what you expect a police officer to do. They are taught, especially in light of all the recent headlines, to do things without harming that person. The cops are trying to think. The person they're trying to bring down is not thinking. They're just wailing and screaming and fighting everything they can. It's a very different ballgame. I don't see where the cops did something wrong. However, how do we stop this? How do we end this? And we have a society that has turned into all of these alternative things. We have to talk and more therapy and more. At some point, there just needs to be hard discipline. I go back to something I was told when I was younger. And granted, I was very religious when I was younger. One of the elders told me this, but he said, parents do not raise kids. Parents' job is to raise adults. And this idea that you have to be soft all the time is just crazy. At some point, there have to be really, really hard lessons taught, and there has to be real consequences for your actions. If you believe that you can do what you want and you're going to get a couple days suspension, you're going to be right back there, nothing is stopping you from doing that. It's interesting. There was a forum, I wasn't at this forum, but I heard about it afterwards, where they were talking about kids breaking the law and what do they call it when all the cars get together on the highway and block the highway and protest or whatever it is. And they said they were getting kids who were under 18 because the consequences were so low. But then once they turned 18, they would stop. The crime would drop for that person. And we're seeing that all over the place when it comes to thefts and car break-ins and all those. These are kids. And it does impact that the consequences have become less and less and less over the last few years, decade, what have you, in Connecticut with our crime laws. There is something to be said for stiffer penalties to do and preempt this absurdity that we're seeing, especially from late teens. Chrissy, the cops did what they're supposed to do, which is keep the public safe. They were in a public area acting like fools fighting. I don't think the cops enjoyed tasing a teen. If the kids listened and dispersed and stopped fighting, it wouldn't have gone this far. It's 100% correct. Like, I don't know, even as when I was a kid, I'm 46 years old. When I was a kid, you were told when the cop said something, you stopped. That's it. That's all there is to it. And these kids are completely out of control. And at Dunkin' Donuts, by the way, what I don't know the answer to, were there any civilians in this place? Were there any, little old ladies getting coffee? Were there average people getting coffee? Because God help you if a mother with a baby was in there while this was happening. Because I'm sure that 15-year-old kid didn't give a damn if there was a mother and a baby in there when that was happening. The cops had a responsibility to calm that situation down and subdue the perpetrators in a way that keeps them from harming others first and then themselves. They can't just walk in there, punch the guy in the face, and knock him out. They can't do that. Cops cannot do that. And none of our cops did. When the cops go into a Dunkin' Donuts, their first concern is, who else is in this Dunkin' Donuts? Who's working here? Who's sitting here having coffee? What seniors are having coffee? What single parent, single mom with a baby are in there doing something? Let's protect those people first. The second person they want to protect is the perpetrator. Granted, if you're telling me they're a bodybuilder, any one of those guys can walk up to that kid, punch him in the face, knock his teeth in, and he's out cold and everybody's safe. But the cops don't do that. They can't do that. They are taught to have self-control, not to do that. And that's what our cops did. Quite frankly, we have every reason to be proud of what Branford cops did that day. One cop went there, tried to de-escalate the situation. He could only handle one person at a time. The other person ran and started more stuff. There's a video of what looks to be the vice principal getting something smashed over his head, which is unfortunate. I don't know the exact situation of that. We can find out down the road. In talking to some teachers today, this was a big deal in school. So I'm sure in the next few days, and I'm sure parents are going to get kids home from school and get some updates on what happened in school today. But if you haven't seen the video, go on Stephen Mazzacane's Facebook page and watch the videos. You can go on Branford 7's Facebook page as well. You can watch the videos there. If you need to see the press release from the police afterwards, go on stevemazzacane.com. I also have the link to it on Branford 7 and get all this. But I don't understand how there is a mentality that the police acted inappropriately. I don't see it. At the same time, the mentality of parents need to do better, you can say that 1,000 times. It doesn't make a difference. It's like saying we need to cure cancer. That's great. Everybody wants to cure cancer. Everybody wants every parent to be great. It's not going to happen. So if we want to start addressing this, there's a few things we have to look at. One, what state laws are taking place that are adding leniency to the outcome and the discipline when people act this way? And I think there are some things that need to be looked at. And two, are there things on a local Board of Ed level that we can look at and say, let's find a way to make this, eliminate these issues? And I think we have decades of experience that show us that when kids are busy and when they join organizations that teach teamwork, especially, they do better. You don't see that. Now, we've had, I mean, there was a football program that came in that acted completely inappropriately, trashed the locker room, I think, last year. So I'm not saying people on football teams and sports teams, and I can't imagine theater, like, really, if you're, I don't know, if you're in the summer version of Mamma Mia, do you really trash the locker room? I doubt that. But in any event, it's unlikely that you're going to have any of these problems go away when you start saying part of our school day is an extracurricular activity that you must choose. I don't want kids wandering the streets at 3 o'clock. And we can yell all we want, oh, there has to be more stuff for kids. The problem is stuff for kids don't make money. So there's going to be very few private entities that are going to invest in doing some stuff for kids. Because if you just don't go there on a regular basis, enough of those things to make money. The school has to take some real, and this isn't just Brantford, it's everywhere. We've talked about starting school later. It may make sense. Start school at 8:30, start school at 9 o'clock, have classes go till 3, and there's an extracurricular activity till 5:30. And you make that your day. So kids are not going home to empty homes. Their parents are home or close to it for the most part. They're not lingering at Dunkin' Donuts. They have something to do. There's something to be a part of. And when we start doing that, we make students accountable to other students, this will change. There's a story, when I go to the casino, I like to play, I bet on sports, obviously, but not obviously, I guess that doesn't have to be obvious. But I also I play poker. And the one room there are the fewest cameras in is the poker room. You know why? Because you're not just playing against the dealer, you're playing against other players. The biggest police you'll ever have are other people you're accountable to. When somebody joins a football team, a tennis team, a golf team, whatever it is, when they sign up for a play and they have a part in that play, at some point, they're accountable to other students. They're going to be far more better behaved because they're accountable to something beyond just an authority figure. Maryland, 839 doesn't work for all parents. Make the day longer for them. Listen, there's no solution that works for everybody. It just doesn't. But the normal workday for most people is 9 to 5. So it does make sense that our high school at least comes close to that. And all these problems tend to happen from 3 to 5 or 3 to 6, right after school when these kids get loose. So there's no solution. You know, the perfect can't be the enemy of the good. There's no solution where everybody's going to be giving a standing ovation. But teaching kids to be a part of something and accountable to their equals can go a very, very long way in solving this problem. In short, I don't see where the police did anything wrong here. Police are not going there to a bunch of kids hoping to hurt anybody. They're trying to be calm. They're trying to de-escalate. They don't want to use force. And at the end of the day, they were forced to use some, but the end result was if there were any injuries, they were to the cops. Those cops put those kids' best interests at heart. Those kids are not harmed. That's impressive to me. Tracy, mental health should be a part of the school day. How to deal with anger, adversity, depression, suicide. Normalize talking and teaching with these kids how to deal with complicated feelings. I don't disagree with that. But I think the same thing we learned from the military. Once people start learning to be in teams and work as a group and be accountable to each other, a lot of things get better. And, you know, instead of dealing with who's going to fight who after school, when you're dealing with how to run a 3-2 defense or whatever it is that you're running on team, or how to stick up for your teammate in the next game, it gives you something, a higher level thing to work towards. Mental health's important, but we can't just keep throwing money at mental health. There's another alternative, which we're running away from, mandating that kids be part of something after school. That your school day goes till 5 or 5:30, and it includes 2 to 3 hours of whatever the extracurricular activity is. And I don't think we get a significant improvement until we start looking at it that way. Maryland, it's just not what happens after 3. It's also during school hours, inside of school. Oh, absolutely. They vape in the bath. So, okay, hold on a second. They vape in the bathroom. They buy weed from other students. They don't respect butt drivers. They bully minorities. I agree. But you know how to get rid of a lot of this stuff? Teams. teams, because now you're accountable to each other. I love the whole they make fun of minorities. Yeah, there's bullying going on. There's no question. The way to stop bullying minorities is spend time together. And then if you do this at these teams, you're accountable to other players on that team. Now, these kids are not the mindset that want to do better. These are Michelle. These kids are not in the mindset to want to do better, or they're leaving school during the day to walk to Dunkin' Donuts. These are the same kids who are vaping in the bathroom, and we have to lock bathrooms where children cannot use them. There's a bigger picture here. Listen, we can yell that there's a bigger picture here all day long, but is that bigger picture something we can fix? At some point, there are budgets. So we can say it's parenting and it's society and it's social media, but there's no immediate solution for those things. So instead of focusing on those things that are far too big and far too broad for us to actually address, what are the things we can actually address? And that's what we have to figure out. Steve, I think BHS has plenty of extracurricular activities for boys in the fall. Ben, I'm sure there are a bunch of clubs. Many private schools mandate kids participate. That's all I'm saying. Make sure there's enough extracurriculars for everybody, and you got to pick one. When your class ends at 2:40, whatever the hell time it ends, you go to your practice. And you're accountable to somebody. When you're accountable to your team, the likelihood of you vaping in the bathroom goes down. When you're accountable to your teammates, and your teammates are every color and race, very likely your desire to bully somebody because they're black or red or blue or orange or Asian or whatever it is will go down when you spend time with that person on a team. As people get to know each other of different backgrounds, different races, compassion kicks in. Empathy kicks in. We understand where those people are coming from. The benefits of being on a sports team or a theater camp or working on a play or the chess club or the math club or whatever are monumental. And we see 40, 50 kids in a bathroom in a parking lot at Dunkin' Donuts. Why the hell are they there? Dunkin' Donuts aren't even that good. Go to Sherry's, they're much better. I don't know if they're open at that hour. But it just doesn't make any sense. Keep them busy. Teach them the qualities that adults need to have. Bill, how about a town meeting at the firehouse and every kid that participated in Dunkin' Donuts violence attends to be part of the solution? Yeah, good luck with that. I agree with the sentiment, but good luck with that. See if the 50 kids can explain why they were here. No, here's what I love to see. If we have private schools that can mandate extracurricular activities, maybe there's something to it. Now, it might require a little more funding. We have to hire more coaches, more athletes, more leagues, whatever it is. But we can find, Stephanie, I agree with you. Only so many kids make the team. Going to have to figure out how to add teams and coaches. I had someone on here. Holy shit, I forgot his name. He's a really good actor, and he is in a bunch of plays. We did an interview with him, I don't know, a year or two ago, and he talked about trying out for sports teams. And he goes, what brought him to theater was on sports teams, okay, if you're good, you play, and if you're not, you sit on the bench, right? There's not always a role for everybody. There's only a certain amount of teams. But theater, there's always some role. You may not be the lead actor, but you can be in the ensemble. You can be in the stage crew. You could be the carpenter building these things, all these different things. Yes, sorry, Colin. I always forget his name, and I love the kid, and he's incredibly talented. Chris Lemieux is who I'm talking about. And he talked about that. He was doing sports, but he wasn't all that athletic, but he's a phenomenal actor. Or you're phenomenal building sets, or you're phenomenal at working in the ensemble, or you have a good voice, but you can't act. So we'll find a place for you. Like, there are so many options out there that we have to find a way to get these kids involved. And if you're telling me that private schools are doing this, there's a reason. So people pay extra to go to a school where they're mandated to do this, and we can't learn from that. What do you think would happen if we started telling every student in Branford, consider yourself in school till 5:30, there's extracurricular activities that are mandated? What would that do to the situation we saw yesterday? But I think if all those kids had to explain themselves to the community would see clearly what we were dealing with. The community would. Most of them wouldn't have any idea. But I think I think the community knows what we're dealing with. It's our knee-jerk reaction is they're just bad actors and they're people from New Haven and there's bad parents. Okay, even if all of that is true, it doesn't negate the problem. Hampton Hall is 35 per year for a 6-year-old. So if we can give and mandate extracurricular activities in town for the same $0 cost that each parent pays now, isn't that a good thing? If outcomes are higher in private school, can't we at least look at some things in those private schools that may not be cost prohibitive that we can add here? We talked the other day about Robin Comey running for office and how we're very, very lucky that she's not doing 15 to life for manslaughter for killing somebody and said she's on a ballot. We are very lucky yesterday that somebody's head wasn't smashed in. One of those, you saw those two girls fighting. They're beating the hell out of each other on asphalt. One trip, fall the wrong way, and a life could be over. We have to do something different. Listen, Steph, there's always going to be exceptions. Not everything's ever going to work 100%. Her comment was it needs to be optional. Kids transition between both parents' houses in some cases. Absolutely. There's no one size fits all solution for everything. But I know we had about 50, 60 kids yesterday that had nothing to do around 3 o'clock. And if they had something to do around 3 o'clock, we wouldn't be dealing with this now. Okay, leave it there for today. We'll come back tomorrow, probably go back a little more to politics. If there's more that comes out from the police department, if I see another video, I'll post that. A lot of people have asked, like, can they friend me on Facebook? Knock yourself out. Sure, I don't mind. I accept all friend requests. I very rarely block people unless you're a complete asshole. So follow me, like it, friend request, I don't care. Either stevemazzacane.com or elsewhere. Maryland parents have to be involved in their children's lives. It's like, okay, you are 15, do whatever you want, bye. Yeah, Maryland, I agree that in some utopia, that would be the case. But we have a lot of parents that can't or just choose not to. And the school still has to look at that and try to address the problem. You're not going to find a way to make all the parents who are not involved the way they should be to suddenly become involved. And quite frankly, knowing some of these parents, I don't know that I want them involved. There's no license needed to have a kid. And the fact that you have one doesn't mean you're going to be a good parent. So the school has to say, okay, what do we do? The town has to say, society has to say, okay, we have this problem, but we cannot force someone to be a good parent. So what do we do? What steps can we take? I would take the steps of adding extracurricular activities, keeping these kids busy to 5:30, 6 o'clock, not let them go home and wander the streets or go home to an empty house. Give them something to partake in and be a part of. And I think teams have shown us over time, for decades, teams, theater, whatever it is, that those kids perform better because they're accountable to something more than themselves or just an authority figure. They're accountable to their equals, other students, other teammates. And it's worked. And there's a reason why high-priced private schools mandate that. Okay, I'm going to go for now. We will be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. As always, send in questions or issues. If there's more information on this event yesterday, please send it in, more videos. Be glad to take a look at them. That may change the way we view it. Until